being proposed for the redevelopment of the Steinmart building and immediate property on there. Before we get started, I did want to recognize that Judge Amanda McClendon is on here with us. I'm not sure if she'll stay on all night, and since we don't have the option to have her on video, I will just go ahead and recognize that she has joined us. She was on the council for many years and was really a pioneer for women on the council. So I've appreciated her friendship and guidance through my term on council. So Judge McClendon, thank you for joining us, and you're welcome to hang out if you want and see what's going on. Otherwise, for everyone else, the way we're going to proceed with this is similar to our last meeting, where this is the introduction. The development team will give about a 30-minute presentation, and then we'll do questions and responses from there. And so if you would like to submit a question, please enter it into the chat box. I think the way this is set up tonight, it will just be sent to me and I will read them off and save all of that as well. And then if you have any comments, concerns, or just general feedback on the project, if you'll email me after the meeting, I will compile those and keep them together for everyone. And so we are going to get started in just a second. I am waiting to know who is the first presenter from the development team. Does anybody on the development team have access yet?
I have access to share my screen, but I believe we're still adding a few people who will be speaking.
Okay, is that you, Beth?
That's Abby who is speaking.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we have now gotten video and things, which I will work on that next. The only reason I ask people to make sure that they stay muted and videos off is because we can lose, we'll lose access. I've gotten dropped off before and things like that. So if you don't mind, if you can go ahead and stop your own video and mute yourself, that would be great. If you're unmuted, that will just help make sure that everyone can stay on. I'd hate to get bumped off in the middle of the meeting, which has happened before. So please bear with us. I get a new laptop this weekend, and hopefully things will go smoother from there. But all right, development team, whoever is starting off, please go ahead and share your screen and start your presentation.
Okay, great. Can we add Chris as a presenter so that he's able to unmute himself?
Rosie, is that something you can? I was trying to figure that out and had a little bit of trouble.
Yes, what's the name?
It's Chris with KH.
Okay, bear with me just a second.
My brother is Chris with just a K. That's why I made the distinction there. Chris is not always common to be a K name.
So it's Chris, like a K?
It's a KHRIS, and the last name starts with P.
Oh, I got you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. Rosie is our council chief of staff, and also just general make sure that we don't all fall on our faces at times with things. So thank you, Rosie. All right, development team, if y'all want to get started, you have the floor.
All right, this is Chris Pascarella. Thank you, Councilmember Murphy. You're right, it is unusual to see that spelling that's a first name. It's always a conversation starter. Well, I appreciate you for facilitating this meeting and for your continued input on this process. And I thank each of you who live and work in the neighborhood for your interest in this community and for your questions and your valuable input. Again, my name is Chris Pascarella, and I work with Pearl Street Partners. We're local development partners with Crescent Communities here in Nashville, and I lead the team for Crescent that's been working on this community we call Novel Lion's Head. We've got several exciting updates about the community that we're looking forward to share with you tonight. They're largely influenced by the feedback we've received from you and other community stakeholders since the last time we met back in April. We also have some updates to the traffic analysis and plan that we want to share with you tonight as well. Now, I don't see the presentation up. Abby, I'm still seeing everybody's name. Are we able to pull the presentation up so everybody can see it? Maybe it's just my screen. Councilmember Murphy, can you see the presentation?
No, it's not. The PowerPoint is not up yet.
Okay.
I gave her access.
It says, yeah, I'm seeing it. How does Abby share her screen?
I just made Abby a presenter. It's passing presenter privileges over, so hopefully that should do it.
Yeah,
And I will go
Abby,
ahead and say that I have texted with some of the development team this evening. I know these virtual meetings can be difficult sometimes to really get our kind of community conversation with it. And so I have requested that we will do another community meeting in person before this goes before the Planning Commission at the end of August.
Okay, perfect. I do see the presentation coming up now. Do you see that, Councilmember Murphy?
Yes, I am seeing it. So we
Okay.
should be good to go.
Yep. I think she's just trying to get to maybe a full screen on this, because right now I think it's in, I'm not sure what mode it's in here. Just bear with us 1 second.
It should be in full screen.
There we go. Yep, we got it now.
Okay.
All right, perfect. And Abby, I think you can go to the next screen. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Well, before getting into the details of the improvements we've made in the community's design, I just wanted to, I realize that some of you may not have been able to attend the last neighborhood meeting, so I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to briefly provide an overview of Crescent Communities, the local team we've assembled for this community for Novel Lion's Head, and just cover some highlights. Crescent's a nationally recognized real estate investor, developer, and operator of high quality, best of class, differentiated multifamily, mixed use, and commercial communities in many of the fastest growing markets across the United States. Crescent's based in Charlotte, but has regional offices in several cities, including Nashville. Our approach is to build value and deepen the sense of community in the areas we develop. And people are always at the center of this approach. It's not just the ones we hope to attract to live in our communities, but also the folks that live in the surrounding neighborhoods. We do this by focusing on deeper elements that define community: walkability, connectivity, retail and restaurant options, as well as open, highly programmed green spaces. We want to be a catalyst for positive change, and we've already done this throughout Nashville in several of our other communities we've had the good fortune to envision and create. The map on the next slide will show some of these communities. Let's see, Abby, if you can go to the next slide. There we go. Some of you may be familiar with these. Novel West Nashville is a brand new community we're just finishing up. It's on Charlotte Avenue, directly across from Jim and Nick's and near the Nashville West Shopping Center. That's the upper left-hand image. The lower left-hand image is Novel Bellevue Place. So we were very fortunate to be part of the transformative mixed-use community that replaced the old Bellevue Mall and is now called One Bellevue Place. And we were fortunate to anchor the residential aspects of that neighborhood. The upper right-hand corner is our community that's in the Edge Hill Village, directly across from the Gulch on 12th Avenue, called Novel Edge Hill. And this was an example of how we had a very deep connection and conversation with the neighborhood, and several elements of that community connected very directly, both design-wise and construction, as well as programmatically into the Edge Hill neighborhood. And then finally, the lower right-hand corner is our Novel Harpeth Heights community. We are really just starting that, and it is along Old Hickory Boulevard, and has taken the place of the closed Sam's Club that was located right near the interchange of Old Hickory Boulevard and I-40. Yes, the next slide, a little bit about our team. Part of the reason our Nashville communities have been so successful have been the positive influence to the surrounding neighborhoods, is that we're very intentional about the vision, the design, and the development team that we assemble. Our team for this endeavor is made up of longstanding Nashvillians who are committed to the broader Nashville community and have a deep understanding and connection to the Lions Head area. Our team members include John Gore with Barge Coffin and Associates, Henry Menge with 5th Gen Properties, Kim and Parker Hawkins with Hawkins Partners, Beth Ostrowski with KCI Technologies, Erica Garrison and James Weaver with Waller, and Beth Courtney and her team with DVL Sigenthaler Finn Partners, and finally Mike Hathaway with 906 Studio Architects. And again, as I mentioned before, our company, Pearl Street Partners, we're a Nashville-based company as well, and I've been here and lived here for over 20 years. The team understands and appreciates the significance of the Lions Head Village, both historically and of its potential for the future. And so now transitioning to our updates, the next slide. So Novel Lions Head would be located on what was formerly the Steinmart retail store, located in the Lions Head Village Retail Center. We are seeking to rezone a portion of the Lions Head Village development through a specific plan rezoning of its existing PUD, which dates back to the 1970s when the center was originally built. For those of you who participated in the last meeting, we've reached out or have reached out to us separately to offer feedback. We thank you. We sincerely value your input, and I hope that this is evident as we review several changes we've made to our plans. In a moment, we'll review these updates, which include greenway enhancements, pedestrian improvements, landscape and architectural updates, and we'd like to spend some time discussing the traffic plan as well. Before reviewing these updates, I want to provide a general overview of Novel Lions Head. Again, this is the former Steinmart site. It is a closed business at this point. Our footprint does not include the Trader Joe's, the shops at Lions Head Village, the parking lot for those, or Sushi Train or Panera, just the Steinmart site itself. Our goal for Novel Lions Head is to create an exceptional mixed-use community designed to enhance the Lions Head Village by bringing best-of-class residential and retail options that deepen the sense of neighborhood. The new community will rest on about 4 acres, and our plan calls for a building that ranges from 5 to 7 stories, most of which will be 5 stories. The only portion of the building that will be 7 is what you see here in this image, and it faces White Bridge Road and the parking lot. The rest of it is 5 stories. It will include 285 residences that will have studio, 1 and 2 bedroom apartment homes, as well as some retail along the ground floor. We received a question about the square footage range at our last meeting for some of these apartment homes. And currently those square footages will range between 540 square feet for our smallest studio to 1,350 square feet for our largest 2-bedroom apartment home. Parking for the community, so the overall, our Novel Lions Head as well as Lions Head Village will have over 713 parking spaces. 332 of those will be available for non-resident public parking, either on surface parking lots or as part of our structured parking garage. It will include extensive landscaping and paths with expanded greenway access, which we'll talk about in a moment. The demographics, so people ask about that. We really believe and are focusing our target demographics on career-focused 30 and 40-year-old singles and couples, young professionals, folks that work in the healthcare industry, such as the St. Thomas Hospital nearby. And we also believe that given our location, that we'll end up seeing some single parents living here as well that have gone through a change in their lives. Pricing here is expected to range between $1,800 and $3,400 per month. And we arrived at those rates based on really looking at the overall market for comparable class and comparable properties such as Ayrton and Veritas in Green Hills. We're confident that this will be a very attractive and highly sought after location for folks to live based on its location, but also its proximity to retail uses and the Greenway. There's also a retail component that we're looking at. We haven't landed on anything specific yet, but we're looking at a boutique retail or restaurant space along the ground floor that would be really complementary to what's there today and also attractive to what our residents and area residents would like. With that, I'd now like to turn it over to one of our team members, Kim Hawkins with Hawkins Partners, who will walk through the changes to the Greenway and landscape plans that we've initiated since our last meeting. Following Kim, John Gore, our civil engineer with Barge Coffin, will provide updates to the infrastructure side of things. And then we'll move on to architecture, where Mike Hathaway with 906 Studio Architects and Brian Frazier with KTGY, our two architectural firms working on this community, will provide an overview of our architectural direction. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kim.
All right, thanks so much, Chris. I appreciate it. Now, I think Abby is going to still need to present.
Yes, I lost ability to share again.
Okay,
So sorry.
no problem. And maybe Rosie can, she is the doer of all things, it seems.
Why don't you just go ahead with the presentation, and then we'll get that back up as needed. But you can go ahead and keep going, because we're going to stay on schedule for the presentation.
All right.
You
My
should have presentation privileges.
So I thank you so much for allowing us to be here tonight. The plans that we're showing shows the previous plan as well as an updated rendering of the site and the greenway and pedestrian improvements that you see on the right-hand side. And again, you might recall our parcel is again within the overall property. It's in the back portion previously occupied by Steinmart related parking. We had previously indicated a 480 linear foot extension of the Richland Creek Greenway along the north side of the residential building with a trailhead that extends up to that retail sidewalk that connects Trader Joe's and Target. Based on feedback from the cycling and greenways community, we did also add a separate 375 foot long, 12-foot wide greenway connector for the Music City Bikeway, which goes around the back of the site and represents the current most common path for cyclists today and is the signed path for the Music City Bikeway. So that has been added to this plan. The existing Richland Creek trailhead and the 8 designated greenway parking spaces are also shown there at the upper right in the target parcel for reference. That is a trailhead and designated parking that exists today. We have 56 public parking spaces within our proposed parking garage, and we'll be providing 8 designated greenway parking spaces there as well. Therefore doubling the designated greenway parking for this entrance to the greenway. Our team has also been in contact with Target. There were some questions about that at the last meeting, and we have their verbal consent to add planting and trees within their property immediately adjacent to ours and where the greenway path is. That ends up being really helpful as there's a 30-foot gas easement along that north edge of the property that restricts planting. So we appreciate that cooperation and collaboration there. We've also provided a full ADA accessible pedestrian walkway from the building face to White Bridge Road that doesn't exist today. And I'll talk a little bit more about pedestrian improvements in the next couple of slides. Next slide, Abby. And this slide is a blow up of our parcel area. And again, you see the previous images as well as the current one. You see that greenway connection along the north and the east sides of the residential building shown here. There's the brighter green that indicates it on the new slide. The greenway trailhead and that greenway extension include added amenities like benches, trash and recycling, drinking fountains for humans and dogs, and a bike repair station that would be right there on the Music City Bikeway path. And overall, this project ends up adding about 850 linear feet to the overall greenway. In order to accommodate that extended 12-foot greenway along the Lionheads condos property line, we were able to make some slight reductions in the building footprint in order to accommodate it. And it's that line that you see right along Lion's Head on the south part, on the lower part of the rendering. And then on the rooftop amenity level, again, responding to some comments, we have indicated a physical screen wall on the south side of the amenity terrace just to mitigate sound. And the parking garage itself has a vegetated green screen along the garage facing the Trader Joe's. And you'll see some updated architectural elevations based on feedback from Councilwoman Murphy and the community in just a moment. So next slide. This is just a little bit cleaner blow up of the pedestrian improvements. From our building face to White Bridge Road is around 600 feet, and we've made several improvements for pedestrians, including the ADA accessible route from the White Bridge Road intersection to this development that didn't previously exist. We were able to do that by slightly narrowing that drive lane. It's currently around 30 feet and going down to about 24 feet. We've been able to provide a minimum of a 5-foot wide sidewalk, which meets ADA for that distance. And we've also added new pedestrian crossings at the new light shown at White Bridge Road. We're also currently evaluating a reconfiguration of the parking between the Sushi Train building and the main drive aisle that was suggested by Councilwoman Murphy. We think it's a great suggestion that could allow for fewer pedestrian interruptions for that sidewalk. It does impact property that's not owned by this developer, as it does involve Sushi Train, but we are reaching out to them to discuss that potential of reconfiguring that area. It's the area that you see the words right there that says owned by others just above the drive aisle. So that whole area is the area that we're looking at there. This development would be making improvements to the WeGo bus shelters on both sides of White Bridge Road. And you'll see we did save many existing trees and added trees along that drive aisle where there were not conflicts with light poles within the parking field. And we did add some additional speed cushions along the main drive aisle for speed reduction. And the next slide is focused a little bit more on the trailhead. This image is just showing the trailhead comparison of before and current. It's right along the north side of the development, adjacent to the Target. And this update includes updates to the architectural facades and materials, as well as to the greenway and trailhead signage and improvements. As noted, the trailhead and the greenway will also receive benches, trash and recycling, drinking fountain, and a bike repair station with locations to be coordinated with greenways. I might note the current lighting for this overall site where the Steinmart is right now has lighting on 50-foot tall poles with no directional control. And some of those light poles are about 15 feet from the property line with a lot of light trespass. Metro recently passed a new dark sky lighting ordinance, which this new site would comply with. And what that generally means is that lighting will be directed down as opposed to out. And it would also limit light trespass over property lines. So we really applaud Metro Council for passing that. And next, I'm going to turn it over to John Gore with Barge Coffin and Associates, who will run through a little bit of our stormwater and pervious area. John, if you're able to be on. I may,
It needs to
John,
be
if you may-
unmuted.
Thank you. I'm unmuted. Appreciate it, Kim. Yeah, this slide is related to stormwater and stormwater quality improvements, which is another big benefit of a possible redevelopment of the site. I think as a lot of people are aware that sites that were built in Nashville in the 70s and 80s were not required to have any stormwater measures, either stormwater quality or quantity measures, which results in the stormwater that runs off the impervious areas, which we would consider the roof and pavements directly off the site into receiving channels. This current site, as you see on the left, the purple color indicates the impervious areas, which is the existing parking lot, existing building. This site drains to the northeast, which is the lower right-hand corner as oriented on this slide, into a drain and off the site and straight into Richland Creek, which is only about 500 feet away on the northeast of the site. The stormwater benefits really have kind of two aspects. The first aspect is just an overall reduction in impervious areas. So on the slide on the right, you're seeing more impervious areas, which is a result of both plantings that are added in the courtyards and along the greenway, and also a pervious paver drive on the left side of the slide, which is going to be the main entry into the new development. These improvements are important on any site as Nashville redevelops, but again, they're especially important on a site like this where any trash, debris, and pollutants that would leave these parking lots go straight into drainage and straight into Richland Creek. So we're looking forward to bringing the site into compliance with Metro stormwater regulations to cease that from happening. The next slide is turning over to Mike Hathaway, and is going to be related to the architecture changes that we've been through in the last couple months.
All right, thank you, John. My name is Mike Hathaway with 906 Studio Design. Also, we're partnered with Brian Frazier and his team at KTGY on the architecture, and I look forward to explaining a little bit about what we've done in the past few months. I first want to say thank you to Councilmember Murphy for the feedback that she gave to our team on the exterior architecture. You know, a lot of architects might have a huge ego, but we don't, and we appreciate any feedback as we're trying to make this the best it can be. Her feedback relative to the overall massing of the building and such helped us provide what we feel like is a better project for our future residents, as well as being a much more appropriate aesthetic for the community. So this new direction gives a much more traditional design approach and gives us a much more timeless design ultimately, which better complements the surrounding community. As part of the updates, we've included sloping roofs on top of the building as opposed to squared off parapet walls. And this provides a better residential feel. This stronger residential feel is also found in the addition of stoops at the first floor units to help us better interact with the surrounding site. In addition to the stronger traditional design aspects, we've worked hard to include various design approaches that help reduce the mass of the building. We're doing this with offsets in the mass, the form, to create shadow lines and architectural depth that will allow the building to sit much more lightly on the landscape. We've also used brick and stone materials at the base of the building to make a much more solid sense of permanency on the site, while using softer materials on the upper floors to give a much lighter feeling up above. At the ground level, storefront and glass on the ground floor will provide us much more transparency that will allow the building to better engage the streetscape and create a much more interesting walk for those who live and shop here. Lastly, we've listened to concerns from the adjacent Lions Head community and have reduced the mass of buildings, as Kim said earlier, and eliminated windows on the ends to be more mindful of our neighbors and their privacy. So we believe in general that we've improved the building, and appreciate again Councilmember Murphy's feedback. So I'll pass it now to Chris Pasquarella.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So the next few slides we would like to present to you illustrate several views of the community, and I'll just take a few moments to illustrate and orient everybody to these views. I think to start with, the lower right-hand view that you see would be what everyone driving into the Lions Head Village Shopping Center would see as you come in. This is coming right off of White Bridge Road. Panera Bread would be on your left. Trader Joe's is in the distant right. And you can see our building back toward the rear of the property. and you know, given how far back it sits, as Kim mentioned, over 600 feet, and with the additional trees and landscaping, I think it really folds nicely into the fabric of the overall area, and sort of creates a very nice bookmark or bookend at the end of the community. The upper left-hand image would be as you come down this entrance street from the first image and you approach the building. In this one, you can get a sense of the retail and commercial space, including our leasing office on the ground floor, and then that green screen along the side of the parking garage that Kim had mentioned previously. Next slide, please. The upper left-hand slide is a great view of the Greenway. You've seen that just a few moments ago, but that illustrates that view down the Greenway toward the entrance to the Richland Creek main Greenway area. Again, a little bit closer view of the front in the upper right-hand corner. And then the lower slide is a view from the Target parking lot, looking down the front street along the building, as well as the Greenway along the slide. And I think this gives a really good example of how the building steps down from 7 to 5 stories, which is the vast majority of the overall community. Next slide, please. Again, another closer-up view from the Target parking lot of the Greenway, and once again, a more of an eye-level view of the 12-foot wide Greenway, which I think will be a fantastic element to add that will run directly along the building. Next slide, please. These are 3 views that are illustrated from the adjoining neighborhood, Lions Head Village condominiums, and what these do is express what, as Mike mentioned just a moment ago, for instance, along the bottom there, the upper left-hand corner better, how we, working with the feedback we got from the board of directors there, eliminated all the windows and balconies from the side of the building that faced into that property, as well as actually pulled the building away and actually took off a portion of the building to move the building away from the property line. We enhanced the landscape buffer. The other 2 images illustrate how we've enhanced the landscape buffer. It meets the Metro C5 buffer requirements in terms of vegetation and trees. And again, the intention is to leave the existing retaining wall and significantly augment the amount of landscaping and screening material between the 2 properties. Next slide, please. So this next slide illustrates a comment that we response to a couple of comments we got about building height. When we really started to research it, there were a few folks that, again, the existing Steinmart, although it's 1 story, it's 30 some feet tall. But what we wanted to do was take a step back and really study the overall area and see what we would find that was 5 stories or greater within about a 20-minute walk or a 1 mile, distance from our property. And we were surprised to find that we had over 12 properties within that distance, and with one of those just being a little bit further than 1 mile. 11 of those 12 were within a 1 mile radius of our property. Many of those are residential. In fact, one of those dating back to the 1930s. Windsor, I think it was the Windsor Tower, but no, excuse me, that's not right. It was the Wellington. But in any event, I think it was important to note that there are several structures that range from 5 to over 10 stories in height, and it really, I think, tells us the story that this area has really been a place where there has been density and height for several decades, and so we really feel like that a building of our stature, would not disrupt the sort of the cadence of development in the area. Next slide, please. So with that being said, I'd like to now turn it over to Beth Ostrowski with KCI, and she will talk about traffic.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. I'm going to take a little bit of time today to walk through the TIS process step by step for everyone's understanding. My hope is that by doing this, I can answer some of the questions that arose out of our meeting a few months ago. I'm a practice leader at KCI Technologies. I've worked on both public sector, so city and state, and private sector projects. That's mostly traffic impact studies. Traffic impact studies that are completed by myself and my team are reviewed and thoroughly vetted by what used to be Metro Public Works and is now the Nashville Department of Transportation. Prior to beginning any TIS traffic study, my team is required to have a scoping meeting with NDOT. During that meeting, we agree on study intersections, background growth rates, nearby studies that we need to include, and other factors for KCI to consider, such as transit impacts, pedestrian accommodations, intersection operations, and access. For this project, we have 5 study intersections along White Bridge from Charlotte to Harding. The Charlotte intersection was studied since our last community meeting, kind of at y'all's request. We heard what y'all had asked for there. Following the scoping meeting, we jump into the TIS process. We first analyze existing conditions. For this project, we collected data in November of 2020. Yes, during COVID, I'll get to that. When we collected, metro schools were in session. We also utilized previously collected traffic data from 2019, and those counts from 2019 were used to normalize our 2020 count data due to COVID. So we give each study intersection a letter grade, A through F. It's called level of service. Not surprisingly, we see some failures up at Charlotte to the west and down at Harding to the kind of southeast, particularly in the PM peak, much more so than in the AM peak. We also see under our existing conditions high delay for the exiting movement from the existing Lionside commercial driveway. All of the other study intersections operate within the acceptable range. Next, after we do that analysis, we study a future year analysis, what it would look like without the proposed development. We add generalized annual traffic growth, and we pull that from historic data. So we use TDOT data for that. And we also include any known nearby developments that are not yet constructed. Finally, we look at the impact of the development. So we generate vehicular trips. We determine how many cars are going to come in and out. We distribute those trips, and we do that by assigning a percent of traffic that we think are going to take various routes across the road network. And we determine the impact of the project on the road network. Those impacts allow us to determine our recommendations. This site is unique because it has previously housed a commercial use, and it could be released as a commercial use without any substantial input from planning or from NDOT. So because of that, we look at the site 2 different ways, both as a comparison to if that releasing happened and at the raw numbers as if this were undeveloped land. So for the raw numbers, the trip generation, cars in and out for this development is roughly 1,600 daily trips, 100 AM trips, and 160 to 170 PM trips. However, when you look at the comparison of if this was just released, again, as a Steinmart or as something else, what we have is a net trip generation. So that net trip generation is 700 daily trips. That's the number many of you probably recall from last time. 83 additional AM peak hour trips. That's because retail really, for the most part, is not open in the morning. And what we actually see is a decrease of the PM peak hour trips. I'm not going to dwell on that one because I think that's probably hard to swallow, and I want you all to believe me as a traffic engineer. The level of service, or again, those are letter grades for each intersection, remain unchanged for all study intersections in our projected scenario. The bookends, we can actually go to the next slide, Abby, if you want. So the bookends to the right on this next slide of Harding and well to the west on this slide of Charlotte do still fail under the future conditions. However, the change in average delay per vehicle is less than 3 seconds per vehicle. So it's a very small vehicle change per vehicle at those intersections. The intersection of White Bridge Pike and the Lions Head commercial driveway, right in the middle here, shown unsignalized, will operate at a level of service A. It'll operate very, very well on both the AM and the PM peaks with significantly reduced side street delay, that queue that everybody's used to sitting in when they're leaving Chipotle or Panera, and it'll be a measurable safety improvement for the area. I understand there were questions at the previous meeting about those bookend intersections that I described earlier, the intersections of White Bridge with both Harding and Charlotte. These intersections are both a crossing of 2 state routes and should be on TDOT's radar for future improvements. The improvements that would be needed to mitigate existing traffic are likely quite substantial and would require right-of-way beyond what is currently available. Due to the right-of-way limitations, but honestly, more importantly, because the impact of this project is anticipated to change the delay at these intersections by less than 5 seconds, My TIS does not recommend improvements to these intersections. Metro has reviewed our study. We'll be updating it a little bit, but they agreed with us and their conditions didn't include recommendations or what's the word I'm looking? Recommendations at those intersections. This is pretty standard per Metro requirements. One other point that was discussed in the previous meeting was the capacity of a 4-lane road. So the standard capacity of a 4-lane road with turn lanes is close to 37,000 vehicles per day. This volume would produce a very good level of service letter grade that I've been talking about. Whitebridge Road, when we look at it, has carried a consistent amount of traffic for the last 20 years. TDOT data shows that number hovering around 30,000 vehicles per day. You know, a little up, a little down, mostly unchanged since the 90s. Based on our analysis, we anticipate the capacity of Whitebridge Road to remain adequate following the completion of the development. Finally, I shared our recommendations last time, but I'll repeat them again now. So we are recommending right in the middle of what you're looking at now, a new traffic signal at the Lions Head commercial driveway. This will need to be approved by the Metro Traffic and Parking Commission. And Councilwoman Murphy had stressed the importance of this, I think, at the last meeting and previously, and I really agree with her. The spacing is close, but our analysis shows that the signal will work to improve traffic in the vicinity. In accordance or, you know, kind of in concert with that, we'll be updating the signal timings along Whitebridge Road. Multiple people have talked about the creation of the sidewalk pedestrian connection from Whitebridge back to the new building. We'll also have some pedestrian improvements at the intersection of Post Road and transit improvements at the Post Road transit stops, including a new shelter, transit shelter for the northwestbound direction. With that, I'll be glad to answer traffic questions at the end of the presentation, and I hope I've answered a few of those in the process. Chris, I'll kick it back to you.
Thank you, Beth. Next slide, please. We're just about wrapped up, and we appreciate everyone's patience and attention. If we're fortunate to continue on this path, I just wanted to share some next steps with everyone, so everyone had a sense of timing. Councilmember Murphy mentioned previously that she was going to be scheduling one more meeting before the August Planning Commission. I don't believe that's been set as far as a date as of yet, but just wanted to put some dates out there for everyone to be aware of. The next Metro Planning Commission meeting, which is a public hearing, will be on August 26th. We hope to be on that agenda. And then if we were to stay on track, the second reading and public hearing with Metro Council would be November 2nd of 2021. All right, that being said, next slide, please. Once again, thank you, Councilmember Murphy. Thank you, everyone who's joined us this evening. We appreciate your time, your patience, your attention, and we're happy to address any questions, or I'll turn it back over to you, Councilmember Murphy.
Thank you. Development. I'm trying to think if I guess we probably should just leave up your PDF so y'all can go back and forth as we have questions. So to the community members, if you will enter your questions either into the Q&A box to send to me or in the chat box. I think sending it to me should go to me now that I'm the host. I've already written down several questions that we'll go over, and then just like before, I'll save them all to be able to get some more responses and potentially change some more details of the project as we did last time. So this is going to be a little out of order, of course, because I wrote them down as I saw them and some things that had been emailed in as well. Can y'all go over the unit count again, and how has that changed from the original proposal?
Certainly. It hasn't really changed in terms of the unit count or the mix of floor plan types. It's 285 apartment homes. They will range from, in terms of style and type, from studio apartments to 1-bedroom to 2-bedroom apartments, which is really in keeping with the program and style of communities like this, when we have a more of an urban or urban suburban context, in which this would fall into that category, and also looking at the anticipated demographics. So we've had a lot of experience with these types of communities, and we feel like the mix will be appropriate for that demographic.
Okay, and so do you have average square footage for those unit sizes yet, or is that not been calculated?
Of course, and I'd be happy to. I don't have all of them at my fingertips at the moment, but our smallest apartment home would be 540 square feet. That would be a studio. Our largest is 1,350. Our average overall would be in the around 900 to 920. I can get that number for you and email it to you, council member. But overall, it would be consistent with other communities like our Edge Hill neighborhood.
Okay, and then go over how many, you have the parking garage, you'll have parking out front, the surface lot that's currently there. Can you give us those, how many are going to be reserved for retail? How many is reserved for the residents? So on and so forth. Can you break down your parking lot numbers again?
Certainly, sir, and I'll I'll answer that, but would invite John Gore to chime in if I misspeak on any of this. Overall, we have 713 spaces in the overall program, which includes our community as well as the rest of the Lions Head Village. It does not include the Sushi Train, the Panera, the Daltz, or any of that. Of that, 437 spaces would be part of our project and in our garage. 381 of those would be for residents, and 56 would be open to the public. And so that would be part of the 713 spaces that would be, in total. So I know those were a lot of numbers I threw out there. Would you like me to go back and revisit any of those?
Y'all can send me a chart of them, and we'll and I'll include it in a follow-up email.
Happy to do that.
With all the statistics. Let's talk about the height again. We're still at 7 stories. While y'all did show several developments in the area that have similar story counts, can you give us your total expected height at the front of this building, and then also discussion of most developments around greenways are usually topping out at 4 stories. Can you address any of that?
Well, again, the portion of the community that does lie adjacent to the greenway toward the back will be 5 stories, so just slightly higher than 4. The only portion of the community that is 7 is right up front. Excuse me. And so I don't have an exact footage of height, but we could certainly forward that to you as well. But it would be kind of a normal ceiling to ceiling heights for this type of community. But we can get you that. We can get you the overall building height if that's what you're asking.
Yes, that would be great. All right. So you mentioned that the dog park, is that going to be open, or is it only for residents?
Because of the size of the space we have really to work within, and because we're right next to the greenway, which obviously is a great pet amenity in and of itself. The dog park is really envisioned to be reserved for the residents of the community. It just really isn't sized large enough to invite the public in there. And of our residents, we do expect about 40 to 60% of our residents will have dogs. So at the present time, it's really sized for that, and we don't have a lot of room back there to make it any larger because of our proximity to the greenway.
Okay. And can someone discuss the decision between privately owned condos and this being an apartment rental complex?
Sure. Honestly, this is the business that we're in, which is to deliver a very high level of experience in a rental community. We have found that many people, obviously there are people that prefer and enjoy both choices. This happens to be, a programming choice that both Stockbridge, the owner of the property, and us feel would be the most appropriate for this location. The level of finish, though, and the level of quality that go into both the exterior and the interior in terms of level of finish in each of the homes, the exterior materials, the level of finish and cost of our amenities, really, in many cases, exceed what goes into a for sale community. And so there's really no drop off whatsoever. And again, I would point you to any of our communities if you'd like to see it in person and experience the level that we deliver. Our West Nashville community really being the closest to this and the newest. So in terms of quality level, it's really as good or better. And really what we're attracting are people who make similar incomes that could afford very expensive residential dwellings, but really choose, for the reasons I mentioned earlier, to have to live in a rental community versus a for sale.
All right. Going back to I've had a question about y'all have used some fancy terms that I learned through land use and being on the planning commission, but let's make sure that we are not confusing other people. Programmed green space is obviously different from just like an open field. But can y'all explain a little bit more what you mean by programmed green space?
Certainly, and I'll invite Kim to speak into this as well, council member. But really, if you look at all of the green spaces that we have, obviously the greenway is self-evident. It's green, it's open green space with impervious area, but highly programmed for a specific use. The dog park again is a green space that's highly programmed. And then we get into some areas that are I would describe as that are highly finished, but not necessarily highly programmed. For instance, the courtyards that you can see on this elevation that face the greenway, those really won't be highly programmed in terms of they won't have active uses or have a lot of hardscape or things like grills or whatnot, but they'll be very formal and highly landscaped and high touch. One of the interior courtyards of our property will have, it'll be programmed to have things like outdoor kitchens and outdoor seating areas and fire pits. So when I say programmed, I mean we try to create what I describe as almost outdoor rooms, and in those rooms you might have an outdoor kitchen or a fire pit or a dog park, and those create sort of specific uses for people that want to do a specific thing.
So, Chris, why is your pool slated to be on the roof rather than in ground or like in a courtyard?
Absolutely. So it really comes back to the experience that we are working to deliver to our residents. It obviously it provides more opportunities for sun and exposure there, but also just the experience of having the views. We've again, you could see this as an example at our Edge Hill community right now that we're getting ready to open to the public. And it really delivers a better experience at the pool than putting it within a courtyard that gets a lot of shade and doesn't have a lot of space necessarily. Just it's something that over time we've found that it delivers a higher level of experience for our residents to have it in that location. It's a lot more expensive to put it there, but it really delivers a higher level of experience and standard of living for our residents who enjoy that amenity. And I think we've taken significant measures, as Kim alluded to earlier, to that it really won't impact it to any measurable degree any of the adjoining properties, especially given where it's located next to the alleyway at the Trader Joe's there.
Can you switch to the view that shows us the parking garage being screened?
Sure.
And will the pool be able to be used year round, or is that something that is only a summer amenity?
Honestly, we generally always include a heater, but I would tell you that those areas historically, from what we found, get very little use in the wintertime. What the amenities that get used during the fall and winter and this early spring months are outdoor kitchens and our fire pits, and we've located those down in our courtyard. And so typically we don't find that the pool gets really much of any use during the wintertime.
Do you have a better view of the garage being shaded? I thought when y'all showed me this on paper, there was a better view. I think maybe
Well-
it's the view from the condos, from Lion's Head looking this way.
Sure.
That better?
Let's see. No, it's really all screened from Lion's Head. You really won't see it. Let's see.
I guess just talk to us a little bit more about what that vegetated wall means and how it works. And tell us, like, is it just screening and preventing the noise from the parking garage, or is it going to be able to screen the light and the noise from the pool as well?
Sure. Kim, if you don't mind, I'd like to invite Kim to respond to that because she works so closely with Parker on all of this. Kim, if you're not muted, could you speak to this?
Sure. Typically a green screen that's actually the name of a product that also represents how that works. So along the whole facade of the parking garage, the green screen is a metal mesh almost that goes up the parking garage and that is planted with vines so that it creates a vegetated screen, visual screen. It does, of course, all of that helps with psychologically and auditory with being able to hear as much of that as well. It is very similar. There are two places that I can think of right off the top of my head that have really good examples of that. There is a lot of green screen that is used at our metro, at our airport, all along the parking garages there in multiple locations. So that's one. Another one that I think of off the top of my head is the Hill Center at Brentwood, which the sides of that parking garage have some green screen on them as well. So they can be planted with various types of vines, evergreen vines that will twine up there and just provide a more vegetated screening. So that does not go all the way to the top. The rooftop amenity level is actually on the roof. The green screen covers all of the side of the parking garage, most of which is also is adjacent to the Trader Joe's. At the top where the rooftop amenity is, we've provided a solid screen across the top. It's in a masonry screen that goes along that wall just so that you can't view in or view out from the pool level adjacent to any of the residential. That pool element, the amenity zone, is about 250 feet away from the very closest resident, if that's helpful.
Thank you, Kim.
So the parking garage is 250 feet away from the condos, the closest condo at Lion's Head?
Sorry, the pool amenity area, rooftop amenity area is about 250 feet. The parking garage is at the very closest, it's about 160 feet. And only a small part of that is actually visible because most of it is has the Trader Joe's in front of it. But so it is about 150 feet, and that is on the other side of that landscape buffer that we had noted.
Yeah, if you look at the image on the upper right-hand corner, it is looking in the direction of the parking garage from the Lion's Head condominiums parking lot.
Okay, let's stay on that slide real quick. And can you give us some of the distant points of how far in between from the back wing where y'all have taken out the windows looking at Lion's Head condos? What is the distance between that and the closest Lion's Head condo building?
That is approximately 65 feet between the back corner of that of the residential structure where you see the greenway going around it. Oh, well, you can't see it there. But from that wall to the closest condo is about 65 feet right there at the closest point.
Okay. And how much taller is that point of the building than the Lion's Head building that it's closest to?
I'll have to ask Mike Hathaway or Brian Frazier if they know the answer to that.
Okay.
It is shown accurately here in the images, but I can't tell you, the architects may know the exact height.
This is Mike Hathaway. I don't know the exact height. I know that we're 5-story on that end. So, that's about 55, 56 feet tall versus whatever the condo height is.
And the condos are probably in the 30s is my guess if they're 2 stories plus roof.
So we are bumping up right at 6:30. And so what I'd like to do is talk about your construction timeline. We have already discussed that should this move forward or get into a fashion that the neighborhood shows support for, more of that we would be writing into the final legislation some sort of parking agreement, or our construction parking will be required to be off site. Can y'all discuss what your typical timeline for building a building like this is?
Yes, ma'am. So typically, a community of this scope, we would be looking at approximately 30 to 34 months in total, but generally, closer to the 30 months. We would anticipate welcoming our first residents at about 24 months. And then it generally takes us about 6 months from that point to complete the community in total. So generally speaking, 30 months from the day we break ground is what we expect for completion.
And then to wrap this up, and then we will get, I will get with the Waller folks to set up an in-person meeting before the Planning Commission on the 26th of August. But Elizabeth or Beth, can you go over the Post Place intersection? Just give us a brief overview of that, and also how will the new light at it's not a road, it's where Trader Joe's comes out, where Panera comes out. How will that light help the overall traffic? If you could just give us some highlights over that again, and then we'll probably start wrapping this up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to answer those. So at Post Place and Post Road at White Bridge, we will be updating some of the pedestrian accommodations specifically on the Post Place side. There are some safety improvements that are needed. If you pay attention when you drive past it or walk past it, there in particular is one ADA ramp that basically would shoot somebody straight out into White Bridge and not safely across Post Place. So that's an update that will need to be included to make the pedestrian crossing situation at this intersection safer for all. Do you want me to talk about the transit a little more detail?
No, not on transit.
Okay.
Let's talk traffic and people in their lights.
Okay, so the new signal at White Bridge at the commercial driveway will operate with what's called protected permissive left turn, so you can go on the green ball or the green arrow, and it is anticipated to operate at a level of service A, which means less than 10 seconds delay on average per vehicle during both peak hours. The biggest benefit, in my opinion, is if you drive through this area with any regularity, you do notice that the queue on the private drive approach into Lion's Head can get quite large, and that it is very hard for vehicles to make that turn out, which creates a safety issue. People make that turn when the spacing isn't quite right, or they turn into the center turn lane and there might be somebody opposing them. So there should be a very large safety benefit. What we see as well as traffic progresses along White Bridge, which would probably be the other concern folks might have, because the spacing of these intersections from Brookwood Terrace to the new signal to Post is basically equidistant. What that means is that we'll be able to time these signals so that once you release from one, you should not frequently stop at the next. They should have coordinated signal timings that allow you to kind of go through all of them in one fell swoop.
Okay, so Beth, what I'm hearing you say is I'll be able to go from the target light to the Post Road light.
Yes, without stopping.
Okay. All right.
Kathleen, I'm not able to find the chat room, so may I ask a quick question?
Pat, if you don't mind emailing it to me, I can ask it in.
Okay.
So what we're gonna do is we have reached 6:36, and if you will, if anyone has further questions that you want to drop into the chat box or the Q&A, I will save those for our next meeting. You can always email me at kathleen.murphy@nashville.gov. My first name is spelled with a K, Kathleen, and that's .murphy@nashville.gov. And like I said, what I would like to do is have an in-person meeting where y'all can see these, see the layout and the handouts in person, and we can have more of a open community discussion than we can have on the virtual meetings. But hopefully that if this has given y'all some feedback on the updates that they have made and the changes that they have made. And then please feel free to send more that they can hopefully incorporate, and we can discuss more probably mid-August, because the next Planning Commission meeting is August 26th. So look in your inboxes for that. And then if you have any other questions, please feel free to email me. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming tonight, and we'll continue to keep working on this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.